recording is started.
Okay. Welcome, folks, to Sunday session, SDE Skills Sunday session. Today, we are running another Ask Me Anything program where we have invited two senior technical program managers who can walk us through their journey and take any questions which you want to ask. So it's Ask Me Anything. Literally, you can ask anything. So prepare with your questions. So today's agenda is Nitin and Likhesh will first go through a deck which they have prepared, and followed by you can ask any question. We can preferences like if you folks can put the questions in the chat, so these guys would monitor the chat and answer your questions in that order. And otherwise, you can even unmute yourself and ask question. But let's first finish them the deck, and then we can jump on the questions. And with this, I would not spend that much time to introduce them because they would give their formal introduction in the deck. So let's get started with this. Over to Nitin and Likhesh.
Sure. Thank you, Soon. Okay, so I'll get started with the agenda. So we have prepared an agenda with what items we are going to cover today. We start with the disclaimer, and me and Likhesh will going to introduce ourselves, how we are doing, and a little bit about our experience. Then we switch on to the core responsibility of the TPMs, talking about the core competencies, what the interviewer generally looks in the TPM. Next, we'll talk about what type of questions generally the TPM get in an interview. We walk you guys through the STAR technique with what is STAR, how we use it, and we'll talk about an example. Talk about a behavioral questions example. Then probably this is one of the very general questions who people who are looking for a job change, they always ask from where should I start? So we talk a little bit about that. And in the end, we do covered few of the resources what we utilized to prepare for our TPM interviews. And it talks about the program management preparation guide, and we also covering the source for preparation for the system design. And we also talk about few of the best practices which a candidate should do while preparing and while giving an interview. And in the end appendix, we are covering few of the slides which talk a little bit of more details. Will not talk there in this session, but if needed, we will pull those slides in. So with that said, I'll get started. The disclaimer. The goal is to help the TPM aspirants by sharing our experience. Content in the PPT is based on the experience and the research works. Options expressed in this presentation are solely our own and doesn't express the views or options of any employer or organization, not endorsing any company or product or paid study material, benefited from the community open forum and try to pass it on. So I just read as it is so that we go with the standards of what the disclaimer is all about. And with that said, I'll move to the next slide. That's an introduction slide. I'll start with my introduction and then I'll hand off to Likhesh to talk about him. So, hey all, my name is Nitin Chadha, and I'm having 14 years of IT experience. I'm working as a senior technical program manager, senior scrum master. I also in the past worked as a test manager and a software engineer. My current role, I am working as a senior technical program at Nordstrom, and before joining Nordstrom this year, I do work 7 years for T-Mobile. That's a quick and a brief summary about me and my background. Likhesh, you want to talk about yourself?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining this session. My name is Likhesh Bramhanwade. I have 17 years of IT experience. Currently, I'm working as a senior TPM with Amazon. Before that, I worked with Nordstrom as a senior TPM, and I also had a gig with Microsoft and Facebook as like a full stack developer on some of those roles. So and also played a Scrum Master role at one point of time. So that's all about me, and I think we can proceed.
Thank you, Likhesh. Okay, cool. So we'll get started with some pictorial representation. Is the TPM role and what the boundaries of the TPM. So I'm trying to represent this in a Venn diagram. If you see the circle on the left hand side is the product manager. The circle which is like yellowish color on the right hand side is an engineer or an engineering team, and the TPM is a role who overlap in both the territories. So he will be working with the product manager as well as he will be working with the engineering team to make sure the product is successfully delivered. So generally we get the question, is the TPM should be technical? Do the TPM should know the technology? So the answer, what we have is yes. So there is a scale in the bottom which talks about from a small t to a capital T, and the level of technicality of a TPM, it all depends upon an organization to organization. There are some organizations where technical, like the TPM should only be understanding the technology, wherever few organizations who want the TPM to help design as well as code. So to get started here, a strong program manager and a project manager with the technical background is a start where the TPM is, and till what extent the TPM roles go technically is contribute and lead to the architectural conversation and can code if needed. So this is like a strength or the breadth of the TPM or the technical expertise what we are looking for. The next thing is how or what are the phases the TPM should be involved. So a TPM should be involved from the concept phase, that is when the project is in the very inception phase, until the end of execution. Means that the TPM will be working with all the stakeholders, gathering the requirement, defining the priorities, creating a roadmap, creating a plan, work background structure, working with the engineering team, and delivering the product into the production. So generally, in an an interviewer asks you a question, how you will define a success for a TPM. So a success for a TPM is defined that if you are successfully able to deliver a quality product into production, coordinating with all the stakeholders, all the parties, that is how the success of the TPM is defined. So this particular image is taken from the source from an article in Medium. So if anybody wants to do a deeper dive into it, probably they can read this article. Okay, with that said, see there is a question coming.
Yeah, this yeah, for the FANG companies, like it's in okay. I'll take that question, Nitin. Uh, does FANG companies expect the TPM to design and code the technical solutions? So the answer to that, it actually like depends. And I think in terms of coding, you won't have to code it, but you will have to participate in the technical architecture. So you need to be that technical so that you understand an architecture and you can provide a feedback. That especially for FANG, but like outside FANG, I think you may not have to do it. Like you just have to like participate in those discussions and facilitate those discussions. Yes. Okay. So the second question is this session about the TPM? Yes. Yeah. This session is about the TPM. And as a lead engineer, will this session be helpful? I think, yeah, just to understand, I don't know, I think it's up to you, Tarun, if you want to know the core competencies or tenets of TPM, then this could be a helpful session for you. Yeah, okay, sounds good. Then we'll go forward and then, oh, go ahead, sorry.
So, a completely new, or maybe it's a weird question, but what's the difference between program manager and TPM? Some companies have program managers, some companies have TPM. Is there any difference between them?
Yes, I can take that.
Okay, yeah, good.
So, yes and no, I'll say it all depends upon an organization to organization. So program manager do all the similar role what the TPM is doing, but what the difference in the TPM that he should be the one who should be understanding the technical aspect of the delivery. So I was reading an article, and that article says that program managers are the persons who track the project, track the delivery with the timelines. And like they had a very good quote there, that they were in the meetings for the leadership, and they ask about, hey, you are reporting your project is a blocker. What's the reason for that? They said that some X functionality is not working. And when the leadership asked, what's that X functionality and what's an architecture, a program manager was not able to articulate and explain to the leadership. But when it's talk about a TPM, he should be understanding that details, what that is, what is an impact, and how the technology works, so that he can cover those details, those technical details with the leadership. So this is generally, we say, technical, the difference between the TPM and the PM. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There is one more. What does the
Oh, good.
Yeah. What does the responsibilities differ from the software engineer manager to a TPM? I think it's this.
Yeah. Okay. You want to take it, or I can take it too?
Yeah. So you can take that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a really good question. So if you think about a software engineering manager, like it's a position where people will be reporting to that person. So, and that particular person is basically responsible for delivering something. So the TPM is in particular will be responsible for a schedule and making sure that program is on track, and then sharing that visibility to all the stakeholders. So that's primary responsibility of TPM, is whether that program is on track or not. So it's I think it's the responsibilities of TPM like really vague. So basically TPM will have lots of responsibilities without an authority. So basically TPM needs to get work done without having people reporting to him or her. So that's kind of a unique place where you have to build a trust, and then that trust comes over the time, so that like people start listening to you, like although they may not be reporting to you. So I think that's a unique part about the TPM. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Should does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. So if I understand it right, TPM does not have direct reports. Keeping that to the side, they would be working with multiple software engineer managers to make sure that the product is delivered on time. So they would be working or coordinating across multiple teams. Is that right at a high level?
Yeah, that's kind of right, because now we are coming to a point where there is the depth TPM and a breadth TPM. So maybe generally, if you are at a junior level, the good chance that you will be working with a stack team. So in that case, you may be working with just one engineering manager, and that engineering manager will be responsible for a delivery of that system. So you will determine the schedule of the system. Like let's say if there is a project to deliver something, deliver X, then your the TPM's responsibility is to basically manage the schedule of that program or a project, and engineering manager's responsibility is like delivering that with a good quality. So making sure there are like CI/CD processes in place, the product is getting delivered with a good quality, making sure engineers are motivated to deliver that particular work. So that all comes from the engineering manager. And
so if the timelines are missed,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Then is it the responsibility of a TPM to answer? No, if in case, as you said, the TPM is responsible for managing the schedule. So if the timelines are missed, then is it the responsibility of the TPM to answer the leadership above?
Yes, yeah, and then even like keeping them, like let's say if you're working with an engineering manager on a particular project, then if you see it won't become a red in a day. Like you will get like a data points in a while, like, and then you will keep informed saying, oh, there is a risk. Like, okay, we don't have like resources and some technology. I'm just making up some examples here, but you will highlight those on your meetings, maybe a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting with the leadership. that you keep them informed. You don't go at the end of the project and tell them like, oh, we didn't
Right,
deliver.
right.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah, it will come back to you.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, moving to the next.
You folks want to first finish the deck?
Yeah. I think let's finish the deck. I don't think we have many slides. We'll
It's
just
fine with
finish
the
it quickly.
audience. Like,
And then yeah, we'll open the forum, and then we'll make it like interactive.
Okay, we'll hold the questions for now. I'll move to the next slide. So over here, we will be talking about what are the core responsibilities of the TPM. So we get started. TPM is a bridge between the business stakeholders and the engineering team. It means that all the business. So when we talk about the business stakeholders, it all depends upon a program to program. Few of the program you are directly working with the product team. Few of the program you have to work with the product, marketing, sales, and all those teams. So you are the person who will be connecting the dots between the business users as well as the engineering team. So what you generally do when you are as a TPM, so like there are few of the every like other words what we use. So when we talk about at a program level why we are building it and what we are building it, all those questions are answered by the product manager. When we talk about how the solution needs to be built, that is like an engineering manager, engineering team, the principal engineering manager who help us design the system, how to approach and implement it. And TPM is responsible for managing the timelines and the schedule for that delivery. So TPM doesn't have to commit by himself, but TPM work with the engineering team to look into the details, what feature or functionality we are building. So once they know about the feature and functionality, that is the time they put connect all the dots. If the project is having like other program is having 5 features to be built across 5 teams, so he capture all the details, all the timelines, make a roadmap, make a plan, and that is where he come up with the overall consolidated timelines, which he can share it with the audience of that particular program. Next is manage the program with the drop down or with the top down oversight, and also he's the one who look into the budget, scope, and the timeline. I use the terminology as BST here. That's a budget, scope, and time, and this is like a iron triangle. If we talk about a program management, if we talk about a technical program management, all those things fall under these 3 categories. So in an interview, you generally get a question related to these 3 things, assuming, okay, you are on the last year of the project and there is something new came up, what you will do. So any of this component or any of these category change, if you finalize and you started working on the project, it will going to impact the other 2, one or other 2 areas. Like if a scope is changed, your timeline will impact, your budget will impact. If the timeline has been that like the program team or the business wants the project to be earlier, so either you have to sacrifice the scope and your budget, or you have to add more people. So you might get these questions from the interviewer, which will going to say if 1 or 2 of the things are not aligned or are like changing during the lifetime of the project. Next, work with the business stakeholders like the product owner, product managers for prioritizing the requirement and coming up with the yearly and the quarterly milestone as what we are planning to deliver from the overall scope. So taking an example, when we have the overall requirements defined at the program level, then we come at the feature level. And from the feature, the next goal of the TPM is to work with the stakeholders to prioritize those requirements. Taking an example, if you have 10 set of requirement available, finalized to build a product, you will be working with your stakeholders across the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to the 10. So that then the next step is that the TPM work with an engineering manager to come up as a t-shirt size estimation for each of the features, and then they try to make the milestones and come up with the timelines as how and when we can deliver this program or the project. The next is TPM work with the principal engineers as well as the engineering team for design and estimations. The next is bubble up leadership reporting. This is a very critical and the important point what an interviewer generally asks in their interviews, that how you do the reporting, because a TPM is an eyes are the eyes of the leadership into the program. If a leadership want to see how the project is doing, how are we tracking, how the timelines are looking, how we are planning or delivering with the initial scope. So this is a very important part, and the TPM should be very strong in reporting. So generally you get a question that how you do a reporting. So like Likhesh was referring earlier, that the very standard way of reporting is you have to report your product stating as a green color, a yellow color, and like a red color. We'll talk about the details how that is, but just like this is very critical thing which an interviewer asks and you have to do in your day-to-day responsibility. The next thing is tracking the raid logs at the program level. So what is a raid log? It's a risk. What are the risks as of today? What do you identified? If somebody is planning to go on a leave, or if there is something, an unknown factor you have identified, you haven't captured off. So all those things are defined as a risk. Assumptions. There are few functionalities or few things which we will not going to build. So we have to keep a track of this, that these are the standard assumptions, what we are considering at the project level. Anything which passes the phase of the risk and is become an issue, so you should be having a track of these are the issues and what is an impact, and if there are some mitigations what you can do. So a program manager take care of all those things. The next is D, is the dependencies. So when we say dependencies, if you are working on a program where 5 or 10 teams are getting connected, what is the dependency of feature A to feature B or feature B to feature C? Means a team C cannot start if the team B needs to be completed, or team B cannot start it until team A needs to be completed. So all these things are tracked at a standard log level, what we called it as a rate log. Okay, with that, I'll jump on to the next slide, is the program, I'm sorry, the 6 core competencies what generally an interviewer try to ask in an interview. Number 1 is a program management skill. In the program management skill, the very first the interviewer asks, probably talk about the program what you're working on, or talk about the complex program or the project. So what he's trying to evaluate is that how you are handling, or I'll say what is the volume of the projects you have worked. So when I say volume, means how many people, how many applications, how many dependent teams are there, so that they can identify that the role for what they are interviewing, are you a fit, or you are overqualified or underqualified for that. So whenever you get a question, just make sure do require read the JD very carefully, that how many teams or the people they are looking for to work with for this particular role. The next is execution. So you might also get a question that how you execute in your day-to-day life, or how you execute a program end-to-end, means from an inception phase or the concept phase to the delivery, and till the production deployment. All those things your story should cover those level of detail. The third is communication. Communication is a key, like I was referring in the last slide also, bubble up leadership status. That's also one of the communication technique. Over here, communication is how you interact with your leadership, how you interact with the dependent team, how you interact with your engineer, so that all are in sync, what we are developing, why we are developing, what are the timelines, what are the issues, and if there are something which is blocking the team, how you help the team to get those things resolved, and how the connection will be built. The next item we talk about is the domain knowledge. So a TPM, if a TPM is working on a front-end application program, or assuming creating a website, he should be understanding the terminologies and the domain, what we are trying to build. If you are working on an airline, if you are working on a retail, if you are working on any of those, you should understand the terminologies and the technologies, what they are using, so that it is very easy for an engineer to explain his point to the TPM, where he can help the team to help wherever they are facing the challenges. The next is the technical depth. A TPM should be having an understanding of a system design. So when we say a system design, like how the system work end to end, from the front end to the middleware till the databases, how the end-to-end things are connected. And I think so there are a lot many sessions which SDE skills cover on the system design. They cover very extensive details there, and how if you understand the system how you are communicating. If there is some requirement where the TPM has to prioritize over the other, he should understanding the details so that he can prioritize those items. The next is an analytical ability, organized thought process. Over here, what they try to understand that there are many situations will come in a project. Okay, the project is running late, or somebody is missed the requirement, or there is total requirement gap, whatever, right? So you should be in a state to analyze the situation and take the proactive steps that what can fit, number one, for the program, for the organization, and for the overall growth of the work what you are doing. So you should be having those analytical skills to come and conclude those things, and how you communicate it. So anything what you work, you do an analysis, it will going to impact the timelines, or either scope, or either the budget of the project. So you should be under a state to analyze all those things and pass that message to your leadership. Next is leadership. So a TPM role in most organizations is an IC role, or an individual contributor role. He is not having people reporting to him. He is not a people manager. He will be working with the engineers, business folk, marketing folks. So he should be having a personality or a persona where he can connect with the people, understand the people, help people with their problems, so that people believe him, people trust him, and people agrees to his approach, or give a creative suggestion or the feedback which help for the overall growth. And he should be taking initiative. So when I say initiatives over here, if a TPM says, okay, there is a functionality which can be done better, right? He should be taking initiatives, working with the team, how that can be improved further, so that the overall process or the program or the timelines can be improved. The next is a collaborative ability. So he again, he should be like, TPM is working with many different folks in the team. He should be having a personality where he can collaborate with all the different types of people, different type of knowledge. When I say knowledge, means a business folks, a sales force, marketing folks, technical engineers, software engineers, system engineers, all those things, right? Next is the feedback. He should be taking the feedback, how he can improve, and giving the feedback, so that it's like a handshake between both the teams, and help the team with the conflict resolution. So there will be a lot of situations where TPM help the engineers, or he has the conflicts with his peer TPMs, or there are some other conflicts related to the timeline. So he should be having that analytical approach, that what work best for the project and program, so that he can make a call and help move the things further without impacting the timeline. So there's all these details in covered from the engineering seeking fire blog. So if you guys are interested reading further, you can probably find details there. With that said, I'll jump on to the next slide, type of questions in the interview. Likhesh, I won't take that.
Yeah, sure. Yep, thanks, Nitin. So now we are coming to the part. Sorry, I think, do you guys hear echo, or is it good?
Very good.
Yeah. So now we are coming to a part where, like, we'll start talking about, like, the interview questions and how to prepare for an interview. The first part in that is basically a behavioral questions. So that's very, like, critical part about the TPM interviewing. Like, if you are preparing for it, basically the whole idea behind that is your, like, past experience basically predicts how you will gonna like do in your, like, a future role. So that's where, like, the different companies ask you a question, like, tell me a situation like when you did something, or tell me a situation when you failed. So they want to see, like, how you did that in the past, and based on that they want to predict if you will do better, or like how you will perform in future. So that's kind of a situation type of questions, and that's, like, very common in the TPM interviews, and I think you will spend most of the time preparing for that. Another is, like, hypothesis, where, like you need to, like, basically assume something, and then they want to see based on your experience, like what you generally do. The third type is a problem solving, or I would say, like, more as the design questions, the system design, where they want to see your technical depth. where like if you can basically handle the technical problem, how much do you know about the like a technical solution? Like, do you know about the distributed system, or like like basically any problem? Like in this case, you see a tiny URL, then the basically interviewer want to see like how much depth you have in terms of a technical aspect. So yeah, we'll jump onto these like during our question and answer sessions, and then like and the other part which is there, which is an open-ended questions. So these are like just the questions where there could be like a different answers. So basically, you will define your answer based on your experience or like based on your prior experience related to the similar problem. So those are typically the types of questions you will be expecting in your interview. Yeah, Nitin, I think we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is like while preparing for the interview, it is recommended to, or I would say like this is one of the pattern, the star. You don't have to like follow this entirely, but me and I can speak on behalf of Nitin as well. Like we basically prepared our answers in this pattern, and like lots of companies follow this pattern. So it's basically it's a situation. The star represents situation, task, action, and results. So when you are basically telling an answer for tell me about a situation problem, you basically split your answer into these categories and explain it that way. The interviewer will get a good part of it, or even like I think some companies they expect your answers in this, and this is like pretty common standard for the behavioral interviewing. So let's talk about each of these like situations. So it's basically what you are doing is you're telling like what was the situation. So there was like basically this is kind of a storytelling. So you need to be good at this part. That way you keep an interviewer engaged. So you will tell the situation that okay, there was some issue, like you want to solve some problem, maybe a customer problem or some other technical issues, and then you will explain that situation. And then in order to do that, there will like multiple tasks involved. Like you have to basically work with different people or creating some plan, and you can like add maybe like you can make it interesting by like putting some like you can putting by some twist or like some constraints. And then the actions. So like basically on the action, like in this case, what interviewer expect is like what you typically did instead of a team did, because they want to see like what was your contribution to that particular situation. And basically the last part, which is the results. So lots of companies, they are like a data driven. They want to see how you measure success. So basically they want to see like, okay, was there like the one of the things to measure a success is you basically use different metrics. One could be like there was a revenue growth of by X%. So you should tell them, or like there was a process improvement, or there was like you saved some labor cost. Any of those things you should highlight, and that will help interviewer know that okay, you basically knows what the success means for that particular situation. So that's this is at the broad level. Yeah, let's jump on to the okay. So these are a few examples about the behavioral questions, and I think you will find these easily anywhere, like on internet. If you look for these, they are like yeah, you can find them easily. So it's basically one of the example is like, okay, tell me about the most critical problem you saw, like the most challenging problem you saw, and do expect that it's not only the question you're going to get asked, like there will be a follow-up questions. Why do you think that was a challenging or a critical problem? So you need to be ready for the follow-up question. So so it's basically what interviewers do is they basically go into a depth. So once they ask this, so you will be answering the this question in a star format, and the follow-up questions would be like, how do you define that was a critical problem? So I think you will have to be ready with that answer. The other question could come is like, what was your role? And the another follow-up question could come is like, okay, like if you have to do the same thing again, would you do it differently, or would you do it the same way? Any improvement? So you will have to be ready with those follow-up questions, because those are the questions which are basically driving your interview. So that's one example. The other example is like the second example is a really good, where you have to give an example of a failed program or a failed project. The reason is like, you don't have to only tell the success stories. I think in some interviews you have to tell your failures too, and the learnings from it. I think the what is expected from this question is, okay, you'll explain where things went wrong and what you learned from it, and did you repeat the same mistake afterwards. So that's basically what interviewer is looking into it. So the other question is, give me a situation where you help customer or showed a customer obsession. It's basically you went above and beyond and then helped customer. So you saw some opportunity to make things better, to help customer, and then you basically did some change. So maybe you saw there was some process issues, and then you resolved that by putting, let's say, an FAQ, or like changing few things, let's say, on the UI, and then that helped customer to do their work better. Yeah, so that's one of the example for it. Last one example on this take is like, give me a situation where you helped outside your day-to-day responsibility. This is also an interesting question, which often get asked to see whether you are helping any other teams, because your role is to basically help your team, but are you going above and beyond and helping other teams as well? So you'll have to be ready with some scenarios for this question as well. And yeah, so these are like kind of we shared some flavors of questions. Yeah, you will find these types of question on internet by searching for the interview questions. Yeah. Okay, cool. Nitin, do you want to take this?
Yep, let me get there. Okay, so the next one is probably, so the question generally we get, okay, now I want to look for a change, or I want to change my job. Where should I start? So the simple answer in a day-to-day role, what the TPM do, TPM help manage to organize a project, and to get this done. The very first step, what I suggest, and this is like based on the personal experience, that organize yourself, that what exactly you are doing. So make a project plan or an Excel, that what are the categories you have to study and read, and what are the tasks over there. And with that, try to identify the resources, because if you are like, if you have to read some technology, or if you have to read about different project, or you have to read something your project is using but you don't know, so add the YouTube URL, or add the document URL and everything, so that you have everything at one place. Second thing is put the deadlines there. So why I suggest to have, or we suggest to have a deadlines here, is that if you try to work something toward the goal or toward the timeline, you know that I have to achieve and I have to get the thing done. So always try to put some deadlines to the work what you are doing. And if you don't know, because when you start working, that's like total unknown territory or unknown work for you. So just put some tentative timelines. These timelines you can push or pull as per your needs, but just try to give some timelines. and dedicate a time, how much time you think you need to spend on this. If you, because this is, I can talk about my experience, that if I started looking into something and if I find this interesting, I go doing deep and deep and deep, and that is where you lose the track of the things. If I targeted at 60 minutes, it goes 120 or 180 minutes, where we want to avoid those things. What is needed for you to understand that system, and you think, hey, 60 minutes is sufficient, put the 60 minutes there, and every day refresh after you study how much time you invested. And if you feel like, hey, 60 minutes is not sufficient, you need to increase it, just increase it to 90 minutes, okay, so that you can track an overall progress of how you are doing. So to get started, just make sure you create a template at a category and a task level and go it from there. This is a very good stepping stone to talk and to start your interview preparation. And there is a template already available. This is URL which is available openly on the internet. So it will be, if you click, you will get to that. So that's like for seems to be a program manage a product management, but you guys can alter it based on your task and everything. So this is something a product management details, but yes, this can be altered based on the needs of the particular role and the person. Next thing, I'll be talking about the sources for preparation. So this is again a program management sources. The first thing is a step-by-step TPM guide. This is the engineering seeking file. This is a very famous blog. And over there, like a few of the slides which I picked, a few of the content which we are covering is, this is the source. So try to go into this. It talks about a very extensive details of each of the categories, details, questions, and everything. So start with this. It can give you a high level understanding of what and how we are doing. And if you are preparing for the leadership principles, so there is an article on Medium which talks very much extensive details, what those leadership 14 leadership principles are. So you can refer the second URL on the Medium. The third is, there is a blog as Interview Genie, and it talks about the Amazon interview sources. So what that lady has did, so she has categorized all the 14 principle, and for all 14 principle, what are the question tagged to each. So it talks about the details. So this is a good source of reference when we talk about a category or a principle A, what is questions which can fall under those, and that can be a good source of reference for the questions. The fourth is the TPM podcast from Mario. This is really helpful. So I think so Mario, in the March, he published one more podcast. So while you are driving, while you are walking or doing exercise, just turn on this podcast. And this podcast talks about the experience of the program manager. So what Mario do, he interviewed the TPMs, and from there, he tried to gather the experience. He asked some questions to them and find an answer. This is like starting from the very basic, starting to the technical and how it works in the FANG. So he tried to interview people from different FANG. I think so the last interview he was talking to a guy who is from Engineering Seeking Fire. The guy, he's like, and he's in Google, and they were talking about an experience in the past. He talked about people from Amazon, T-Mobile, Microsoft, all those details. This is a very good reference material to listen if you are an audio person. So these are the four areas or spaces where we try to find our details, and this will be helpful for you people also. The next is for system design. To get started with system design, there is a free GitHub URL by forget the name of that guy. So this is like a very popular URL on the GitHub, and the guy talks about, oh yes, I think so, that's the one. And they talk about nearly 20 or more than 20 of the system design problems, starting from the very understanding the functional requirement, going into NFRs and trying to divide the use cases, then high level architecture, what type of algos you will be using, then the solutioning. He covered very much detailed there, right? And the second one is the system design interview. Again, there is a similar type of a content available on Evernote also, where, what, and how. Again, whatever is free, I have quoted in the brackets as free, so you guys can refer there. The next is there is a channel, I think Tech for Dummies by Narinder. He has covered a lot of system design videos. That's a good content to watch and understand. He get into from a starting to a very detailed thing. So this is good even people are, if is an engineering manager going for an engineering manager system design for TPMs or even for senior engineers, that's a very good source. And the other is there is a lot of content at SDE team, skills team, they do a lot of system designs. And if you go to the YouTube channel, there's a lot many videos available where they talk about the system design, then they talk about the interview people. That's like a very good content if you guys are interested into understanding more on that. And the last one is, this is a paid one, and the reason I like this one is that this is a very structured approach and in the written format, that it's not the videos but like the written. He has covered I think so 12 to 15 of those system design problems here, going from a very start in a very structured and the format and what patterns and flows to be used. So these are like the very good content if you want to talk about system design here. Okay, talking on the next thing as the best practices. So the very first thing is practice, practice, and practice. The more you practice, so for a TPM role, the core is you should have a story to talk about your experience. So all these questions, what we talked at a high level, you should be having a stories to talk about that. So the more you practice the story, the more content you can add, the more facts you can bring it to them. And the more you practice, the better you get every day with those stories. Number second is have a mentor to guide. It's probably, this is my personal suggestion, that if you have a mentor whom you can reach out to, you can ask question, he can check, hey, how are you doing, where are you doing, okay, what's your challenges. That is always a good thing. So have a mentor who can check with you on the regular basis, what are the areas you are struggling, and help with you with that. Any task you pick have a goal and the timeline. So going back to the where to start, if you are wants to design a system or a tiny URL, your goal is to do the complete understanding and put some tentative timelines so that you know when needs to be finished. If you pick the thing open-ended, that will not going to help. So make sure that if you are picking any item, any task, any work, define a goal, what you want to achieve at the end, and what are the timelines you want to achieve it. So this is very helpful. All the stories what you prepare, like Likhesh was referring, that try to use a star format. This is very helpful, very effective. And the interviews, when they ask you question, if you see a lot of time they keep on taking the notes during your interview. So if you try to say or give your answer in the star format, it helps the interview to capture the facts and the notes what he's trying to say, and it's a good representation of your story and your experience, what most of the interviews and the companies are looking for. The next is give mock interviews. So try this at least couple of times before any of your interviews. Try to give to your friends, to your family, or find people on the SEs, because I think so there are so many mock-ups going on, so that it can help you practice, and anything you needs to improve, you get a feedback upfront before your D-Day. That can help you get all the relevant feedback upfront. Your story should have the facts and numbers. So while we are talking about the STAR technique, the results we talks about, okay, what you got or what you did as a part of this project. I increased the revenue by 50%. I decreased the cost by 50%. Have those numbers ready. If you don't have the numbers, try to dig back again into the project to get those facts and numbers. There are situations where you don't have numbers, right? So tell me a time when you failed in the project. If those are the case, you talk about the learnings and how you use your learning next time. So at the end of each of the story, you come out as a hero, what I say that, and how you show your success to the audience. Results are the section, or R is the section where you talk about all those details. So these are the some best practices which we suggest you to follow. And with that said, I think so we covered our content and open for the questions. So